Hello, Zeb here again. This is the second take. Today I'm gonna rank Van der Graaf Generator's studio album. So the ones you see here is not included. The excellent Vital album, their last album from the 70s. This is not for the newbies, but I tend to play this very often, and if it were to be in my ranking, it would be in my top 5. Also, this is at the BBC, the double disc edition, which is fantastic. If you don't own this one, like Van der Graaf Generator, this is a must-have. This is a 2 CD and a DVD, recorded live 2010. It's also quite interesting, a good mix of old and new material. And the last one is Merlin Atmos. This is the double disc edition, and they actually perform Flight for the first time ever, and they perform Pledge of Lighthouse Keepers. They play Scorched Earth, they play the entire Mergles 3, they play Man Erg, and so forth and so forth. This is, I think this is the last live album they've released. Live performances 2013. It's a fantastic album. But we are talking about studio albums. At the bottom, it is their first reunion album called Present, and a shame really to place this at the bottom, because it is a very interesting album. CD1 contains more written music with lyrics and everything. Disc 2 is just improvisation, pure improvisation. So people who love porn hearts and madness going around there will probably find this album interesting. Worth mentioning of songs is of course Every Bloody Emperor, and in Babelsberg and On the Beach. But of course I would never recommend anyone to start with this album. Next up we have another totally improvised album. This usually ranks at the bottom for most people, but I'm not sure they have really listened to this album, because as a fan of Van der Graaf Generator, it's not gold, but it is very good. And the fun thing with this album is that it was recorded and mixed during 2006 to 2012, and it's all instrumental. So again, if you like the more experimental stuff from Van der Graaf Generator, you can't go wrong with this. Next up we have A Grounding in Numbers, which I like most of the songs from here. Your Time Starts Now is great, Mathematics, it's great, Red Baron is creepy but fantastic. I like the more fun song called Embarrassing Kid, and most of this album is excellent. There is one song I can't really stand, and it's the third song, Highly Strung. If you take a listen to the song Highly Strung, the riff, it always reminds me of Status Quo, Whatever You Want, Whatever You Need. Or maybe I'm thinking of another Status Quo song, but the riff is very similar to Status Quo song. But if you remove this short, very short song, it lasts like 3.5 minutes. If you remove that one, you have a fantastic Van de Graaf album from the later incarnation. Also worth mentioning is Medusa and Mr. Sands, Smoke. Most of it is fantastic. Next up is the debut album, The Aerosol Grey Machine, which was in fact meant to be released as a Peter HAMMILL solo album. Thus it weren't to be, because he had a really shitty record deal in the very early period. And yes, this is the debut album, and I like most of the songs on this album. Afterwards is great, Oriental Street is great, Running Back is great, Into a Game is great, Octopus is great, and their first so-called hit, Necromancer. If you don't know this album, you should take a listen to the song Necromancer, because that tune kind of points in the direction the band is going towards. Yeah. Next up, the last of alright, I missed one album, the last one, Do Not Disturb. I'll probably place it right here. So after Do Not Disturb, I'll place Trisector, and this is the second incarnation of Van de Graaf, and this is the best one. This is the one you want to check out if you don't know the reunited Van de Graaf. It starts off, I wouldn't say weak, but kind of, well, the title says it all really, the hurly-burly. But besides the opening, every song here is great. Interference Pattern, The Final Reel, Lifetime, Drop Dead is okay, Only in a Whisper, fantastic, All That Before, fantastic, Over the Hill, 12 Minutes of Pure Heaven, and the ending song, We Are Not Here. And many of these songs have in fact been performed live. So yes, if we only consider the reunited Van de Graaf Generator, this is for me the best of the reunion albums, or Mark II, or whatever you prefer to call it. Some might crucify me for placing it here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My 7th place goes to World Record. This is kind of their last with the classic lineup. After this, Hugh Banton leaves the band, and also David Jackson leaves, but he comes back for a little stint. Look at the guys on this picture. Take a look at those. They are surely sober. But yes, World Record by Van de Graaf Generator is an excellent album, and I can warmly recommend this album. Songs here, When She Comes, it's a fantastic song. A Place to Survive, another fantastic songs. Masks, it's an okay song. Murderous Tree, well, to be honest, sometimes to me it is a masterpiece. At other times it's maybe a little too overbearing, and it ends with a beautiful ballad called Wandering, which is fantastic. Then next up is the least we can do is wave to each other, which is kind of their true debut album, even if it's their second album. But here the lineup is more stable. You get Two Sax Jackson, aka David Jackson, and you also have hang on. Nick Potter is a full-time member, so almost the classic lineup: Peter Hamill, Hugh Banton, Nick Potter, Guy Evans, and David Jackson. This is a beautiful album. This is maybe a little more easy on the ear compared to the 2 or 3 albums after this. But here you clearly start to hear their progressive influences, and I think even Robert Fripp is guesting on one song on this album, or no, that's the album after this. But the songs Darkness 1111 is a great opener and a fan favorite, I would assume. Next song is a beautiful ballad called Refugees. And again, if you don't know Van der Graaf Generator, Refugees might be, for the light-hearted ones, a very good introduction. Next up is White Hammer. It is a little bit silly maybe, and a little bit pompous, but I like it. I like it. Next up is Whatever Would Robert Have Said, and this is a brilliant song. Then we get another ballad, which also I will warmly recommend you to check out, called Out of My Book. I think Peter Hamill still plays Out of My Book live to this day, and the album ends with the magnificent After the Flood. So this is kind of mostly progressive stuff, but with some beautiful ballads. Same goes for this album, Still Life, from 1976. They were kind of on a roll, you can say 75, 76. Show you briefly the artwork. And Still Life, many place this album as their favorite, or at least very close to their favorite, and it is a masterpiece without doubt. It opens up with the fan favorite Pilgrims, which I urge you all to listen to. Next up is Still Life, which I love, but I prefer the more bitter version released on Vital, the live album. Then we get the highlight of this album for me, La Rosa, which is just great. I were about to say insane, but it's not insane compared to other songs. Then we have My Room, Waiting for Wonderland, beautiful song, and it ends up, the album ends with Childlike Faith in Childhood's End. I like this song, but I think maybe it's a little bit overrated. Seems like fans really love this song, and of course I like it, but I don't think it's a masterpiece. Fourth best Van der Graaf Generator album for me is H to He, Who Am the Only One. That is hydrogen to helium, I suppose. Air, the air we breathe. And not everyone, I think, would place this album this high up. I'm not sure, but to me, it is their fourth best album, with titles like Killer, House with No Door, The Emperor in His War Room, Lost, check out Lost, Pure Madness, and the ending song Pioneers Over Sea, which also is fantastic. I love every song on this album, and this was to be the last album with Nick Potter for a couple of years at least, and this album features Robert Fripp playing guitar on The Emperor in His War Room. To me, this is a 10 out of 10. Just to clarify. Then, third place, most people's first or second, it is God Bluff, which is a masterpiece. It is a 10 out of 10. Blah blah blah. Quickly show you pictures. And this is a kind of people who know Van der Graaf know that they had I don't know if they quit, but they kind of broke up in a way in 1972 after a grueling tour, I think in Italy. Then Peter Hamill just started releasing solo albums, but most of those HAMMILL Solo albums features sometimes all of the members of Van der Graaf Generator, and there are only 4 songs here. All of them are stellar: The Undercover Man, Scorched Earth, Arrow, and The Sleepwalkers, which ends up in a weird I don't know how to describe the Sleepwalker middle theme, but if you haven't heard it, it's surely worth hearing. And now maybe I'm a little bit controversial, but man, do I have a soft spot for the Quiet Zone, the Pleasure Dome. Here you can see they dropped the name Generator and only released it as Van der Graaf. That was due to Hugh Banton leaving and David Jackson leaving, but Nick Potter came back, and Peter Hamill was still around, who composed about 85% of all the music. Their drummer Guy Evans is on it, and they have this guy from String Driven Things, Graham Smith, I think his name is. Let me double check my resources. Yes, Graham Smith. And also that guy is on, but I'm not sure he was a full-time member or not. He performed live with them during 77 and 78 on cello. So they had one guy on cello, they had one guy on violin, you had Peter Hamill on vocals and guitar, you had Nick Potter on bass and fuzz bass, and you have of course Guy Evans on drums. So you can't go wrong with this album, in my opinion. To me, this is just as much as a Van der Graaf Generator album as any, really. Some people thinks or feels that this is more or less a Peter Hamill solo album. I would disagree strongly, even if Peter Hamill wrote almost everything on it. The difference between a Van der Graaf album and a Peter Hamill album well, the lines are kind of blurry. I'll mention it a little bit after this ranking, but just why do I place this album as my second favorite album? Well, it opens up with Lizard Play, we get the Habit of the Broken Hearts, we get the Siren Song, we get the Last Frame, and we get the Wave, and that's just the first side, and there are a lot of emotions going around on this side. Then side B is a little bit more aggressive and maybe a little bit more fun, not that introverted, more extroverted, outroverted. Side B opens up with Cat's Eye, Yellow Fever, which is pure madness. Next up is The Sphinx in the Face, great tune. Chemical World, maybe the song I like the least on this album, but that just proves how strong this album is. Then we get a slight reprise of The Sphinx in the Face, and we also, of course, all the bonus tracks I forgot to mention on the earlier editions, but here we get Door and Ship of Fools, which both are incredibly good. I'm not sure, maybe I would rank it a little bit lower if they hadn't added those two outtakes or B-sides. So it's no secret what's the first place. It is, of course, Pawn Hearts. And I think if you don't, people in general, fans of Van der Graaf, they tend to either pick Pawn Hearts as their favorite, or they pick God Bluff. Some might pick Still Life, but very few places the Quiet Zone this high up. In fact, many places place this way too low. It's a beautiful cover art by Paul Whitehead, who also did some art for Genesis and other artists. And why is it my favorite Van der Graaf album? And have been my favorite Van der Graaf album since God knows. The album contains 3 songs, or should I say pieces. It opens up with Lemmings, which is sublime. Next is Man Urge, which also is sublime. Side B, we get A Pledge of Lighthouse Keepers, which goes on for 23 minutes. And this tune is probably in every fan's top 5 all-time Van der Graaf generator songs, and for a good reason. They go through every fucking motion you can think of. From madness to lost love to, I don't know how to describe it, but I strongly urge you to try out the song A Pledge of Lighthouse Keepers. And a fun fact, this album was originally going to be a double LP. Thankfully these remasters add a lot of extra songs, and we also have a couple of others intended for this double album on the H2E album. So yes, a solid 10 out of 10. I'll be really quick with the solo stuff I have by HAMMILL. Fool's Mates. Again, it features all of the members of Van der Graaf. It features Robert Fripp. These are songs Peter wrote, I think, way back in 1967 and 8. So many of these songs predates Van der Graaf in many ways. This is a fun album, and it's not that progressive, it's not that heavy on the ear. It's more of a fun let's go into the studio and just crank out these old songs. I love it. Next up, it is The Chameleon in the Shadow of the Night. Another fantastic album. And here we have The Black Room, which features all of the Van der Graaf members. In the End, Easy to Slip Away, Rock and Roll. I love this album. I really love it. Then The Silent Corner and The Empty Stage. Again, some of the songs features all of the Van der Graaf people. Songs like A Louse Is Not a Home, I believe. And the great song The Lie. Forsaken Gardens. Red Shift is incredibly good. Modern is also one hell of a journey. It starts off kind of normal and just suddenly goes totally weird. In Camera, maybe his best so far, if I'm thinking chronological, because I'm not ranking these, I'm just going through them. Ferret and Featherbird, No More the Submariner, Tapeworm, Again, Faint Heart and the Sermon, The Comet, The Course, The Tale, and side B is insane. Gog and Magog, not for the faint-hearted. Magog is pure musique concrete. Some people would probably say it's totally unlistenable, but I love it. Next up is Peter Hammill's Nadir's Big Chance, which is a punk album released early 1975. And this one features, again, all of the members of Van der Graaf, I think on every song. And this kind of spawned Van der Graaf to go back and reform and do Gobluff. Songs here, everything's great. Nadir's Big Chance, The Institute of Mental Health, Burning, Been Alone So Long, a beautiful ballad, Shingle Song, a very sad but beautiful ballad. People You Were Going To, a really old song. And also Birthday Special, it's a real punk rock song. It's fantastic. Peter Hamill over his breakup album with, I think her name was Alice, because there is a song called Alice Letting Go. Again, it features not on all songs, but it features a lot of Van der Graaf members. This is a very delicate album. There are even some string arrangements on it, but there are also some rockers like Crying Wolf, and Time Heals is a fantastic song. Time Heals is great. Betrayed is really cranky but great. And Lost and Found is a beautiful ending to a beautiful album. Next up, The Future Now. People thought that Hamill was going insane. Maybe he was. We have songs like A Motorbike in Africa. We have a song called The Cut. We have a song called Palino Rus, Castaway. All of these three last songs are really experimental, and he did all of this. He rented a house, and the story goes that the heating system didn't work. And maybe that spawned some of this madness. Just look at this picture. Next up, it's PH7, another great album. I won't go into details, but if you like Van der Graaf and you don't know this album, check it out. Black Box is first released in 1980, when Van der Graaf was no more. I love the experimental stuff on this album. Jargon King, Fog Walking, The Spirit, In Slow Time, The Wipe. All of these are highly experimental. And side B got a beautiful song called Flight. And guess who's drumming on that one? Well, Peter Hamill, of course. I haven't got every album, so this is Skin. This is very 80s sounding, but it's a fun album. I like it. Here's an instrumental album he did called Sonics. Again, maybe an album for the hardcore fans. Here is a double live album, piano, guitar, vocal. And it kind of plays songs from every era, from 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so forth. This is a great live album. And the last one I'll show for now, it's a compilation called The Storm Before the Calm. There is a companion to this, which also is great, with more ballads. This one focuses more on the rock stuff, and it also features a tune not on any album called You Hit Me Where I Live, which is totally 80s, but it's fantastic. Go and listen to You Hit Me Where I Live by Peter Hamill. That's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave any comment if you don't agree with my ranking of the Van der Graaf stuff. Feel free to leave your ranking in the comments below. Until next time, bye bye.